breaking news.
Good morning. We are following breaking news across the Commonwealth. At least 4 tornadoes touched down in Kentucky overnight, killing up to 100 people. One of those tornadoes was on the ground for 200 miles and devastated the small town of Mayfield, Kentucky, where more than 50 people are feared dead this morning. There are reports of damage from the western tip of the Commonwealth to central Kentucky. Governor Beshear says this is likely the worst and most deadly storm in the history of the Commonwealth. Now, this storm has moved out of our viewing area, but leaves behind just a devastating path. Good morning to you. I'm Julie Dolan here with meteorologist Suzanne Horgan and Matt Milosevic. Just a really sad morning in Kentucky. Metro Police now say a man who was shot and killed outside a Bardstown Road McDonald's was targeted. The shooting happened yesterday afternoon at the McDonald's near Goldsmith Lane. Investigators say the man was shot in the parking lot and later died at the hospital. We talked to one customer who was with her 5-year-old daughter when the shots were fired. City officials are investigating after a partial wall collapse at an apartment building in South Louisville. Look at this. Fire crews went to the building at Southwood Apartments off St. Andrews Church Road early Tuesday. People who live there say they were awakened by what sounded like an earthquake, windows falling out of the frame. Okay, here's some of that damage, and bricks crashing down. And with some cooler temperatures, today might be the perfect day for some hearty comfort food. Specifically, a nice warm pot pie. Today is National Great American Pot Pie Day. Pot pies are distinctly American, of course. The first frozen pot pies were introduced by Swanson Foods in the 1950s. How about that?
Who is the best pot pie, Julie?
Costco.
Yep,
you
sure
know
does.
it.
We know
They're
it.
so good.
They're delicious. So don't say we didn't tell you to get a Costco pot pie.
And they're seasonal too.
They're out. They're out. They're already there. So
we need to get paid for this. Would you show your vaccination card so you could go maskless inside a business? Meta Bar in downtown Louisville is allowing customers to ditch the mask completely if they show proof they're vaccinated. You can still be served at the bar downtown if you are not vaccinated, but you will be asked to wear a mask when you aren't seated. And this morning, the search and recovery efforts continue. We are checking in with Marvis Herring. He is live in downtown Mayfield with a look at the damage. And Marvis, it was not just the candle factory damaged in that small town. Okay, so we know, Matt, that this storm was on, at least one of these tornadoes was on the ground for 227 miles. Yeah. And you have a really good picture because it's hard to grasp what that really is. So,
Right.
Talk to us about the length of that storm. And I want to talk to you a little bit about the candle factory that Matt's mentioning. I believe we have some overnight videos, some overnight aerials of that. What he's talking about is around 10:30 our time last night, one of those tornadoes was on a 200-mile path and hit a candle factory where 110 people were working at the time. The factory completely collapsed. We've seen images. Here it is. Unbelievable. Cars were thrown into the center of this factory. We've heard several reports of volunteers, hundreds of volunteers, running into this rubble, trying to rescue screaming people. Most of those people are, all of those volunteers, I should say, have been removed. This is now just service workers right now trying to sort through what's left. The emergency management in Graves County has set up a staging area at the high school there. They're asking family members, anybody whose home was damaged, to report there. Wait for phone calls there because power is down. All of these lights you see right now were put up by volunteers. It was pitch black. Volunteers tell us when they first arrived at the scene, and the first thing they said they had to do was to get lighting on this area because they couldn't see. Power. They could hear people calling for help, but they couldn't see. Unfortunately, we are getting a little bit of information about some of the victims. We are told, according to the Graves County Jail Facebook page, that a couple of the inmates were working at the candle factory at the time, and they have died. We've also heard that one employee at the jail has died. We have not heard any names or any information about these people out of respect for their families. But they are asking for prayers out there this morning for all of those who have been injured. Guys, this is just, it's so hard. We don't know who exactly was working at this candle factory, but in a town of 10,000, Suzanne mentioned earlier that everyone in that town certainly knows who was working at the factory at the time. A devastating start to the morning this Wednesday. That shooting happened near the corner of W.J. Hodge and Chestnut Streets. That is where we find our Mark Vanderhoff, who was just briefed by JCPS and LMPD officials. And Mark, what have we learned?
WLKY News.
And Mark, that major we just heard from while she was briefing reporters there at the scene, as she left, she was emotional, saying when she heard the news, her own kids were at a bus stop, and she seemed to tear up and walk away. Talk to me about the mood there at the scene. Have you heard from any neighbors who are out there and may have seen this? This morning, JCPS staff members were at the bus stop where a teen was shot and killed and 2 others injured during a drive-by shooting early Wednesday. Demand for the vaccine is dwindling. The number of people getting a first shot or single dose is down 50% since peaking on April 13th. Which is significant because that's the day the administration announced a pause on the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Yeah, this was some scary stuff, but thankfully that little girl is safe. Police say Stephen Murphy took the car from the Speedway on Fegenbush Lane near Highview Tuesday morning. About an hour later, authorities found it abandoned 4 miles away at the Meyer on Preston Highway. And listen to this, the 5-year-old girl was still asleep in the back seat. Right now, police are looking for at least 2 suspects involved in a chase through West Louisville. Officers initially tried to stop a car believed to be connected to a recent homicide at 28th and Broadway. WLKY Chopper HD was overhead as the driver weaved through traffic, running through lights and stop signs, trying to get away. The car eventually turned down a dead end on Olive, and look at this, kept driving into Algonquin Park near the public pool before eventually stopping under some trees by a football field. Officers were on the scene minutes later, but by then the suspects were gone. Officers used a canine to canvass the area, but at last report, they had not captured the suspects.
You may remember we recently told you about a new unexpected menu item at Taco Bell, crispy chicken wings. Well, our Marvis Herring did us all a favor and he tested them out. Take a look at this.
Let me have another one.
Oh, I love this so much. A wing's so good, Marvis went back for seconds. So it turns out these limited edition wings live up to the hype, at least according to our resident foodie. The wing is described as a Mexican queso seasoned crispy wing with a spicy ranch sauce for dipping. An order of 5 wings will cost you $5.99. They're available only for a week, so you have until Wednesday to test them out. And Matt, after seeing Marvis's review, I'm like, I gotta get these.
Good morning to you if you are just joining us. We are coming up on our 10 o'clock hour, and we have been covering breaking news all throughout the morning. Devastation in the Commonwealth this morning as at least 4 tornadoes have touched down from western Kentucky to central Kentucky. We are tracking the damage in 17 counties this morning. We are expecting to hear from Governor Andy Beshear. He's going to give us an update at 11 a.m. We last heard from him at 5. At that time, he declared a state of emergency in Kentucky and said that he has already reached out and asked for federal assistance because of the severity of the damage that we've seen across the Commonwealth. We've been showing you images out of Spencer County, out of Mayfield, Kentucky, Bowling Green. This damage is widespread this morning. Here, look at you one-handing it.
Yeah.
She's like, just add a little touch of yellow right here.
She learned a few weeks ago, remember? She's doing so good.
I like it. Alex,
I've been taking
you.
notes.
We are too. Hey, coming up in just a few minutes, we are talking to CBS Morning's newest co-host, Nate Burleson, is joining us live right here on WLKY. Stick around. We'll be right back.